Gameweek 11 Captaincy is closer than you might originally think. Let's get straight into the video and take a look why. First up on the shortlist is a man that some people are setting as the perma captain, it's Haaland. He's facing Liverpool away at Anfield. It's not the easiest of fixtures, but it is easier than it usually would be because they are out of form, that Liverpool defence. And the challengers are the Spurs duo Kane and Son. They're up against Everton and they've got the home advantage. Before we move on, it's worth noting that with Son being the only midfielder on the shortlist, he gets an extra point per goal scored and the clean sheet point potential as well. This week's honourable mention goes out to Mitrovic. He's a risk of not playing due to his recent injury, and this is being recorded before the press conferences, just so I can get the video published on time. Let's take a look at the non-penalty stats per 90 minutes for this season. Haaland, as we know, is having a great season. He towers above the Spurs players in these stats. Kane's not even having a bad season. Haaland's just making him look like he is. He might be able to keep up his underlying stats, but in terms of his return points per 90 minutes, there's no way that's going to stay at 7.8. It's going to regress at some point. Even if it was to regress now, 4.4 is more than enough. Don't forget, this is without penalties, so let's take a look at the set pieces. Even with all that information we've just spoke about, Haaland's a dedicated penalty taker for City. Kane's on pens for Spurs, which means that Son isn't. He also takes direct free kicks as well. Son takes the indirect free kicks and corners. Haaland doesn't take any free kicks or corners. Let's take a look at the probability of each player scoring or assisting. These odds are based on the assumption that each player plays 90 minutes. We'll review the expected minutes later on in the video. Haaland's got the highest anytime goal scorer odds with 55%, Son's got the highest anytime assister odds with 34%, but it's Kane who's got a balance of both, and therefore he's got the best chance of returning with 66%. He does have just a 1% higher chance than Haaland, and don't forget you get more points per goal scored than assists, so I call it level between those two. Moving on to the points projections, Son's got the highest overall with 6.4 on Fantasy Football Scout. However, he does have the lowest points projection as well with 4.8 on Fantasy Football Fix. On this rare occasion, both websites agree on Kane and Haaland. They've got Kane on 5.6 and Haaland behind by 0.4. If you average out the scores, Haaland's obviously on 5.2, Kane's obviously on 5.6, but Son's on 5.6 as well, so we can call it a draw between Kane and Son on this one. Now we'll take a look at the opposition. Liverpool slightly underperformed their underlying stats. They've got 1.5 goals conceded per game. As we know, they're having a terrible season by their standards. If you look at the numbers last season, they're much better than this, and surely they will improve. Now Everton have overperformed their underlying stats massively. They've only averaged 1 goal conceded per game, but they've been expected to concede 1.6. That figure's 0.2 worse than Liverpool's, and don't forget that the expected numbers are better at projecting future goals conceded than actual goals conceded themselves. So if anything, Everton's had a worse defence this season. It's just Pickford's been on good form, and the finishing from the other players on the other team hasn't been good enough. Something else to consider is the fact that Haaland has to play away from home, whilst Kane and Son have got the home advantage. There's not much to split the opponents on the clean sheet odds. That's because City's attack is so good. I'm not saying Spurs' attack isn't that good, it's still decent, but it doesn't compare with City's. Before we draw up a conclusion, let's carry out a quick risk assessment. Haaland didn't feature in the Champions League midweek, so he's had over a week's worth of rest, and he's got the highest expected minutes with 83. Kane and Son did feature in the Champions League just over 2.5 days before this fixture. Kane played the full match and Son nearly played the full match as well. Kane's expected minutes is 73 and Son's is just higher on 76. So there's a chance that the Spurs players might come off before the 90th minute. There's also a chance for Haaland, but that's smaller. Okay, so I've made a decision. There's not much to split the top two candidates, they're both viable. So if you skip forward to this point, make sure you go back and watch the data analysis because you might conclude with a different player to me. I think Kane's been good enough this season to be a worthy captain pick, and if you look at Liverpool on paper, yeah, they've been poor recently, but they've still got a strong defence and it will come back at some point. It could be soon, so I think Kane's a worthy captain at home to Everton. Thanks for watching. I've got a team selection video coming out at lunchtime today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of these videos.